Greetings, Saber fans. Do you have one of these, or one of these, and you're lost and you don't know what to do? These are all some open source soundboards. All of these are made by Fredrik Hubinette. This is the Teensy Saber V3. This is Proffie 1.5. This is Proffie 2.2. It doesn't matter which one of these you have. We can help you along the way to get in these things doing what they do. Making lightsabers like that and that do really, really cool stuff. Greetings, everybody. So I want to start out, and you've got a Teensy Saber or a Proffie V2. I am going to post all these links that I have shortcuts to in the description box below the video. So if you have a Teensy Saber or a Proffie board, trying to see here. Let's see. We'll go to Proffie board. Now I want to go back. So Teensy based lightsabers. This is Fredrik's main page. If you have a Teensy Saber, I'm going to have to bookmark this. If you have a Teensy Saber, then you need to go to this page, which describes how you do the Teensy Saber, and it's got the configurator and your sample configuration file. And I'm going to tell you how to use this basically on Proffie, but it's the same thing as it is on Teensy Saber and Proffie, but you just need to make sure you're on the right page. If you're programming a Teensy, you need to be on the Teensy Saber Electronics V3 page, and you need to pick your configuration, so I'm going to show you here in a bit, and this will give you your wiring diagram for Teensy Saber. If you're on Proffie 1.5, you're going to go to the Proffie page, which is Proffie board. Bam. There's Proffie 1.5, and it has a picture of the board so you know, hey, I'm working on the right board. This is Proffie 1.5. There you have the layout. Tells you what all the pads do on Proffie 1.5. And then you have the configurator. Now the configurator starts here where you pick out what kind of saber you're going to be building, and it ends down here where it generates a configuration file and a wiring diagram depending on what you say. So let's say I'm building a NeoPixel saber and I want it to be a crossguard. You can see it just added the crossguard quillions onto my wiring diagram. And let's say I want an OLED display and a Bluetooth module. It's adding all of those in there. So now I have my full wiring diagram for a crossguard with an OLED display and a Bluetooth module. Then the configurator then creates a sample config file for you if you use the stock Teensy fonts, which I'm going to show you where to get those. But it's already made for you. There you go. This is the configurator, and this is on every page, whether that be Teensy Saber or Proffie board or Proffie 2.2. All of these pages for all of these boards all have Fredrik's configurator. So you have to input into this box here what type of lightsaber you're building and what options that you want. And once you do that, it generates your wiring diagram right below it. So you can screenshot this wiring diagram and print it out and put it on your wall. That's what I do. Kind of helps me get through the whole process of installing a saber. But there's your wiring diagram. If you don't understand another thing on Proffie 1.5, you can see that this ground pad and this negative have to be bridged. You can see it in the diagram. Don't miss that or it won't work. So usually on the back side, I put a bridging wire between these two pads. Actually, I do it between these two pads like this. But I do it on the back side of the board, on the underside of the board, the same side of the board as the SD card is on. If you just watch my installing a Proffie vid, I show you how I do that. You can also see that for your main blade, 1, 2, and 3 fits this is FET1, FET2, FET3, are all bridged going to the negative on your main NeoPixel blade. And I want to show you when I'm talking about FETs 1, 2, and 3 what I'm saying. Right here, LED 1, LED 2, LED 3. So when I say FETs, this MOSFET here controls these pads independently. There's another MOSFET on the underside, and there's another MOSFET on the underside here. The bottom line is this is LED 1, 2, and 3, and you have to bridge all of those. And I also show how to do that in my Proffie install video for your main blade. So getting back to the wiring diagram, here's the wiring diagram, and here's the configuration file for your Proffie 1.5. Now, since most everybody is probably going to be dealing with Proffie 2.2, I'm going to go ahead and do this on Proffie 2.2. So on Proffie 2.2, of course, the pads are different than they were on Proffie 1.5, so you have to pay close attention. Because if you remember, on Proffie 1.5, all our data was down here. Well, now on Proffie 2.2, data 1 is here. Data 2 is here. Data 3 is here, which that's got some problems. Fredrik's working on it. And then data 4, which I've never used, so I'm still looking for it, is down here, is data 4, which is a lot different than Proffie 1.5. Also, there's a big difference between Proffie 2.2 and Proffie 1.5 in that you can see this little piece of copper trace here between battery negative and ground. You no longer have to do the jumper wire between battery negative and ground. This little trace does it for you. Now, you can still separate those. Fredrik has a reason for doing that. It's still a mystery to me, but Fredrik still has a reason for being able to separate battery negative and ground. But on the Proffie 2.2, there's no need for a bridge wire between battery negative and ground like there was on 1.5 because it's already there. And also, on your data number 1, right here, there's already a onboard data resistor for your data 1 line. So you don't even have to worry about a resistor on your blade. But if you have one, it doesn't matter. Fredrik's tested them, I think, up to 1,000 ohms, and still the NeoPixel data was fine. So you do have an onboard data line resistor on the Proffie 2.2. So this is where he's showing just a basic outline of how to wire these things, which can be confusing. If you don't know how to wire a recharge port, there's a lot of videos, particularly on the Custom Saber Shop's YouTube channel. The Mad Cow actually has a bunch of good videos about how to wire a recharge port and how to know which leg is what. On all recharge ports, you have a positive leg, a negative leg, and then you have a negative cutoff leg. So that if you put in a kill key or a charger, it kills the negative power to the board. So you're only getting negative to your battery and positive to your battery. And you have positive to the board, but without a negative return, that keeps your board out of the circuit equation while you're charging your Saber. Understanding circuitry and electrical circuitry is really important if you're going to get into these. So let's say we're going to do a NeoPixel, and let's say I'm going to do, let's say dual, because this is going to be my crystal chamber. This is going to be my crystal chamber. So basically, I have two blades. I have my main blade, and I have an accent blade. And my accent blade I can use for the crystal chamber. We can get a lot more complicated than this, but I'm going to leave it like that. So we have two buttons, a battery, a recharge port, our main blade, which is now on FETs 2 and 3. FET 1 is open. My auxiliary blade, which if it's only 1 or 2 pixels, you don't really need it on 2. You could just run it off one of these FETs. So this would be FET 4 and 5, and then this would be 6. But you'd only need to use one of those if you're just using 1 pixel to illuminate a crystal chamber, or a 3 pixel string for an accent, one of these FET pads is sufficient for that. You don't need to bridge 2 of them. You can see though on data 2, you have to add that data resistor on your data line for your neopixels to stabilize the signal. That has nothing to do with overdriving the neopixels. The resistors on neopixels is to stabilize the data signal. So now that I've set up the Saber how I want it, that's everything I want. Now I have my configuration file. So what do we do with this? We'll get to that in the next video. Okay, we're back. So now we've generated our wiring diagram on the configurator based on how we set it up. And remember, I told you we're using this particular string to light up our crystal chamber, or we can program them to be accent LEDs. And then we have our configuration file. Now, what you're going to do is, you can see it says cut and paste this into a new file called whatever your configuration is called. I usually name the configuration file whatever my Sabers are named. So I'm going to grab all this stuff here, and I'm going to right click, copy, and I open I use a WordPad document, and then I'm going to paste. And I hate how it does this. It always does the whole thing like this. So now I'm going to have to go one spacing, no 10 spaces after paragraphs, there. So this is our configuration file. Why is it? I don't like this spacing. I just don't like that. This is our configuration file. So in our configuration file, you can see it's include Proffie board v2 config.h. If you're doing a teensy Saber, it'll be v3 config.h, include v3 config.h. You can see number of blades here is 2. Number of buttons is 2, which is true. Volume 1000. Everybody's like, well, what can we do here? Well, you can set this from anywhere from 1000 to 3000. It doesn't matter. Usually a good place to start is 1500 and see if you like that. If you need it louder, go louder. Don't blow your speaker. I usually don't run my Sabers above, 2000. This number 144, this is not the total number of pixels in your blade. This is so that the configuration file knows you're using blades that have 144 pixels per meter. So never change this number, ever. Always leave that at 144, unless you're using some weird number of pixels per meter in your blade. This should be 144. Clash threshold. I always have to adjust this. I usually start my clash threshold at 1.9. In most 3D printed chassis, you get a lot of speaker translation that creates false clashes. If you're getting false clashes when you light up your Saber, what I do is a balancing act. I adjust this number, or I decrease the volume and increase the clash sensitivity, or if I want my volume where it's at, I just keep increasing my clash sensitivity until my false clashes go away. And then it enables audio, motion, and neopixels, and SD, the SD card. And that ends the top of the config file. Fredrik's got a cool site where he shows you what everything is on the config file. But now we get into our presets, or our fonts, how we're defining them. For those of you guys that have been doing Plector boards or NEC boards, these are your banks or your fonts, whatever you want to call it. In Teensy Saber, Proffie, and Proffie 2.2, each of these compiles what is called a preset. Now I'm going to highlight the first preset. Now, this is preset number 1. So when you turn on your Saber, this is the first preset that's going to pop up, and the preset is going to use a folder called Teensy SF that contains your sound font, and if you're using the stock font package, then that's going to be Teensy SF. Then for tracks, it's going to go into the tracks folder and find the Venus wave. So if you want to play music, it's going to play this Venus wave that's in your tracks folder. And again, this is all set up as if you're using the standard SD card stuff that you can get from Professoren. I'll show you where to get that here in a minute. Then this is your first blade. It's a normal blade. It's a cyan colored blade with a white flash on clash. It extends in 300 milliseconds and it retracts in 800 milliseconds. And then these closing parentheses and a comma is the end of that particular blade style. That's blade number 1. Now blade number 2, which is my crystal chamber, is also cyan with a white FOC with the same extension and retraction. And then that blade style ends at the parentheses, comma. Now, this little readout here, cyan in quotes, it really does no good to you, but if you have an OLED display, this is what is displayed in the OLED display when you first change to this font. And then the important thing at the end of each preset is this marker and a comma that delineates the end of the preset. So the presets between those two markers. Everything in between those two markers is your first preset. The second preset, we scroll down, you can see it's going to look for a folder on your SD card called Smooth Jedi. And that's the font that's going to be played on this preset. Then if you decide to enact music, it's going to go in your tracks folder and find Mars Wave. And if you're using the stock config file on your SD card, you're going to have the Mars Wave. You can customize these. I have a video on authoring your SD card for Teensy, Saber, and Proffie, and it's still applicable here. Then as the second preset, the blade style is a spark tip with it's a blue and white flash on clash, 300 millisecond extension, 800 millisecond retraction, and there you can see the comma. That's the end of our first blade style. Second blade style is the same thing. It ends in double parentheses and a comma. And then blue is what's displayed in the OLED display if you have one, and there you have the end marker for the second preset, etc., etc. That's what all this stuff is. So when we get to the bottom of the presets, the very last preset is using Smooth Jedi, Mars Wave, charging, which is your blade battery meter, and then your second blade is just black, which means off. Anything black in NeoPixels means no illumination at all. It's just black and black. That means it's not lit up. So our crystal chamber won't have anything going on in it. You could do and style charging here, and your crystal chamber would light up with the battery meter too. But what we have is after the end of that configuration, at the end of that last preset, there's our preset end marker, and here is the end of all of our presets. Then we get into the bottom of the configuration file, which is our blade configs. So this is where you need to put in the exact number of your NeoPixel blades. Most of mine are around 129 NeoPixels on my blades. So that's where you change that number at, right there. 129 is the actual number of NeoPixels in my longest strip. And you have back-to-back strips of 129, so yes, you do have 258 NeoPixels, but your strip is 129 long. So basically, we're saying, look, man, this NeoPixel blade is blade number 1. It's a NeoPixel blade, 129 NeoPixels. It gets its data from blade pin, which is data 1. Color is GRB. And the power pins are LED 2 and LED 3. That's where they're combined. That's just like I showed you on the wiring diagram a bit ago. It's combined on 2 and 3. Your second blade is also a NeoPixel WS2812, and we're going to say we only have 2 pixels on this one. It gets its data from data 2, which is blade 2 pin. It's GRB, color order. Some of you may get RGB neopixels and you may have to change this color order, but the bottom line is that this auxiliary blade or crystal chamber is powered off power pin 4, and you don't have to have power pin number 5. You can leave that there and just run it off power pin 4. It doesn't matter. If you don't have any other neopixels, it really just does not matter. And then that ends your blade configs. So this section here is all how your blades are set up. This is how the Proffie understands which power pins and data pins to send signals to get what's in your presets. The end of the configuration file is how your buttons are set up. So that is our config file, our sample config file. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, let's just save this on my desktop. I'm going to save it on my desktop so we can find it. And I'm going to call this my Saber underscore config.h. We're going to save it right on the desktop and just click yes. Now look, I also have my file extensions exposed. So here's that my Saber config.h. So now what do? We've created our config file. We've created our config file and we're ready to roll with that. Well, what the hell do we do with all this now? So I'm reading, and if you look on top of the configurator, it says after you cut this and paste this file and name it, which we've done, then follow the instructions on the software page. So then we go to the software page. What you need, electronics, you need a Proffie board or a Teensy Saber V1, V2, V3, or a Proffie board V2. You need Arduino IDE. Here he says he's using 1.8.3. I'm actually using 1.8.9. And if you click on this link, it actually goes to the Arduino site where you can download Arduino for your specific application, whether it's Mac or Windows or Linux. There's all the ways you, and actually they're on 1.8.10. I haven't updated mine. I'm still on 1.8.9. But at any rate, you can download your Arduino right here, and you need to download Arduino. Just let it download where it's going to download. That is key. So now I'm going to go back to the Proffie board page, and it says you also need a Proffie board Arduino plugin. So I'm going to click this link, and when you click that Arduino plugin link, it goes to this site. Now, what you have to do is you download and install the Arduino IDE. Never mind all this stuff up here up top. Just leave all that alone. Download and install the Arduino IDE, which that's what we've already done. That's what we did in step 1 on the software page. Then you can see add this address as an additional board manager URL. So I'm going to copy that address right there. And then I am going to open the boards manager from the tools, and this is in Arduino board menu, and install a Proffie board plugin. And I'll show you how to do all that here in just a second. So I have this address. This is the address that tells Arduino where to find the Proffie board plugin. That's all you need is this address. So now I'm actually going to open the Arduino IDE. And it's opening. I don't want a new version of Arduino. Then I'm going to go to File, Preferences, and you're going to click on this box here, and you can see that I've already, this second address here https professoron.github.io, Arduino, Proffie board package, Proffie board index.json. I already have that there, but you're not going to. So you're going to have to paste that address in right here. Once you paste that address, click OK and then OK. Now you're not done. Now you have to go to Tools, and then you go to Boards Manager. So you go to Board, and then over here to Boards Manager, and then you're going to scroll down until you see Proffie. See this Proffie board by Fredrik Hubinette, and you can see I have version 1.10 installed. Well, you're not going to see that. You're going to see this install button lit up, and what you're going to want to do is install. I have the latest version already in my Arduino. You're going to need to install it. Once you install this, then you have the Proffie board plugin working in Arduino. Think about the Proffie board plugin as an add-on to the Arduino that basically helps Arduino communicate with your Proffie board. That is all that does. This plugin helps you communicate with Arduino. I'm going to close out of that. Now, we've done that step. Let's go back. Actually, we're not going to go back. We're going to keep following these instructions. We've opened the Boards Manager. We've added the Proffie board plugin. We've done all that on the Boards menu. Now, we're going to go to the Windows-specific setup for you. You need to follow all these. You're going to have to download Zadig. So here's Zadig. That's what it looks like. You're going to download Zadig, and this is the window that you get when you download Zadig. I think I have it here on my desktop somewhere. And yep. There's Zadig. Now, once you have Zadig open, what it says in the instructions is plug in your Proffie board and toggle the reset button while holding down the boot button. Let Windows finish searching for drivers, then you start Zadig. Select Options, list all devices, and then you select STM32 bootloader from the device dropdown, and then select WinUSB v6.1.7600.16385 as the new driver, and then click Replace Driver. Once you do that, you're good to go on Windows 10 and above. Windows 7, you need to follow these instructions here. If you're having to constantly cycle your boot and reset buttons and run Zadig every time you're plugging your Proffie board in, you did not install the driver properly. So you got to make sure you do that Zadig exactly as the instructions say. If you have a Teensy Saber, you're also going to have to download the Teensy Arduino to support Teensy Saber. You're going to need a micro USB cable to plug into your Proffie. And this has to be a communication cable. It can't just be a charging cable. It needs to be able to communicate. You're going to need an SD card. We'll talk about that later. And some sound fonts or tracks, and we're going to talk about that later. We're talking about software right now. Okay, we're back. Now, here is the big deal. There is the latest version of the Proffie operating system software. This is what makes the Proffie do all its beautiful things. This link right here is what makes Proffie do all its beautiful things. And you can download it right here. So what you're going to do is you're going to click on that link and then save as, and then save it wherever you want. I usually save it to my desktop. So I'm going to close out as a dig here. Now, this is my Proffie OS folder. Now, this is actually a fork that I'm currently running, but it is the Proffie OS. When you download this, you're going to have this folder called Proffie OS. And when you double click on that, you're going to have all these folders in it. blades, buttons, common, config, display, dock, font convert, functions, IR, motion, MTP, POV tools, prop, script, sound, styles. You may not have all these folders because, again, this is a version of the software that I'm using. And then the key thing here is this Proffie OSino, which is just below that. Let's show you how I got to all this. Here's my Proffie OS that I downloaded. And actually, don't just ignore that says 2.6 and pretend it's 2.9. But at any rate, I'm going to double click on that Proffie OS and see this Proffie OSino that's in that folder. This is where you open Arduino from. You do not open Arduino here on your desktop. Open it from this, because when you open it from this, it has all of Fredrik's language that goes onto the lightsaber board to make it do all of its stuff. But before we do that, this config file that we made, we need to put it in our config folder. So I'm going to open my config folder, and I'm going to put this mysaber config.h. There you see it? mysaber config.h. There it is in the config folder. So now that we've put our config file that we made earlier in the video into our config folder, now we're going to open Proffie OSino so we can start to program our board. Now, I'm going to show you how to define your config file. So what you want to do is gently scroll down, and you see right here, starting on line 26, all this define config file, define config file, define config file, blah, 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 blah. And then you see these double slashes like I just put in there. Those double slashes means that Arduino is going to ignore all these. So it's only going to pay attention to the one that we don't have all that in front of. So here I am. The config file we just made, define config underscore file, quote, config / what do we call it, mysaber underscore config.h, quote. Okay, so now I've got my Proffie board and I've got my USB plugged into my computer, and I'm going to plug my Proffie board in. You should hear my computer recognize it. You can see it says setting up device. We're setting up Proffie board. And it should say it's ready to use here in a second. Bada bing. Device is ready. Proffie board is set up and ready to go. Then I'm going to go to Tools, and I'm going to select my port. You can see it's COM28 Proffie board. There we go. Now, we're actually doing a Proffie board V2 here. So I need to go to my boards manager and select Proffie board V2. So you can see Proffie board V2. We're using serial. There's more advanced on that. I can explain later. Use the smallest code. DOFS SD card SPI. COM port 28. We're ready to go. So this is our config file we made. And now we're going to hit this right arrow, which will upload. Bing, bing, bing. Testing, testing, testing. Hopefully this works. Got the full green bar, so it's going good so far. I'm getting some readout here. Oh, 79% of program space, and now it is programming. Now I'm having to actively scroll over here on this bar to see it, but you can see how it's growing like 16%, 17, 18, but you can see these equal signs here are also growing as it's programming. So it's programming. Off we go. Bada bing. So now my Proffie board is programmed. I'm going to disconnect it. We're done with that stage. So the only thing left to do now is to go get my SD card for my Proffie board. Now, the config file that we made uses the standard sound fonts and tracks. So I'm back on Fredrik Hubinette's software page for Proffie OS, and you can see you need some sound fonts and or tracks. I'm going to click that link, and you see this Proffie OS SD card zip. You're going to save that somewhere where you remember where it was. I already know where mine is. It's up here in these folders. Let's see, Proffie fonts, Proffie OS SD card. Here it is. Okay, so basically you want to make sure, and you'll recognize these: Teensy SF, Smooth Jedi, Smooth Gray, Smooth Fuzz, Rogue Commander, Tracks folder. Remember, that's got all our music in it, and if you open that up, you'll see it has the Mars, Mercury, Uranus, and Venus waves, which our sample config called for. Truth crystal. Now I'm going to show you how you can do this another way, but the fact of the matter is, once you get this up and running, and I'm going to do this because this needs to be formatted anyway. I'm going to plug an SD card into my computer. You're going to hear it. Bada bang. It's my GoPro SD card. I don't want all that crap. Just give me the... There it is. So I'm going to format my SD card. I'm not going to change its name. I'm going to keep it as GoPro. Boom. Alright, so now my GoPro SD card is empty. So I've got a SD card ready to roll. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight all these folders. How I did that is left click up here in the corner, cover all of them, unclick. Now I'm going to right click, send to GoPro, which is my micro USB card. And right now it's copying all these font folders onto my SD card. Now these are the stock font folders that work with a standard configuration file. There are certainly ways you can customize this, which I've already gone into detail on that in other videos, but I guess I can cover it here in a second. So, boom. I'm going to close out of this. Now I'm going to go back to my computer and look at my SD card, and there you go. There's all our fonts. So now I'm going to eject my SD card. So I'm going to go back to PC, eject my SD card, and bada bing. I can insert that SD card into my lightsaber, and it's going to work with the config file that we uploaded. Really quick so you can see it. I'm going to go back to Proffie OS SD card. I'm going to show you something. I'm going to go back into our Proffie folder, config folder, and I'm going to go look at our config file that we made, which was mysaberconfig.h right here. And I'm going to show you all something. So this is the stock Teensy Saber fonts. Now they're okay, but there's definitely better ones out there. In our configuration file, if you'll remember this was a preset. We said this was a preset. And the first part of the preset was the folder it was going to look for your sound font, Teensy SF. See, here's a folder called Teensy SF that's going to be on your SD card. When you open that folder, it has all your sounds in it. This are all the sounds that comprise a font. Then for music, it was going to go into the tracks folder and look for Venus Wave, and that's the music it would play. So I can go to my tracks folder, and you see it has Venus Wave. And this is true of all the rest of the fonts too. You can see our second preset, which is right here. I'm going to highlight the second preset. It's going to look for Smooth Jedi, which there's Smooth Jedi. And you open Smooth Jedi, and there's all the sound files that comprise Smooth Jedi. And then tracks, it's going to look for Mars Wave. And there's Mars Wave. So that's basically how it works. So with stock free stuff that you can download from Fredrik's website, you can make the Proffie work. Now, if you'll stand by, I'll show you how we can make it work even better. Okay, so what I've done is I've opened up our config folder that was in, I've opened up our config file that we made at the very beginning of this video. Now we want to start customizing this config file. So we're going to customize blade styles, but we're also going to customize the sound fonts. Let's say for this one, I want to use Sith Crossguard. I'm going to put a folder there called Cross. And instead of it being Venus Wave, I want it to be Kylo's Theme Wave. And then blade styles. Well, for Kylo, I want some kind of crazy, fire blade or something. So I'm going to go open Fett's Proffie style library. And he's got all kinds of blade styles here. And I'm going to be looking for main OS styles. And I want to go crossguard. He's got all kinds of stuff on his website now. So Kylo Ren unstable with localized lockup effects. Unstable dual lockup, localized. Let's see here. Yeah. So there's our main blade. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go in our config file. I'm going to delete blade 1. Now I have to put in another blade here, so I'm going to. Holy crap. Fernando's blade styles are long. So there's Fernando's blade 1. And then we still have our blade style 2, which is this white, cyan and white thing, and we don't want that. So I'm going to delete that. And since I want my crystal chamber to match our blade, I'm going to paste the same blade again. I know this looks long and crazy, but it's really just a bunch of copy and paste. So in this first preset, which we've modified greatly, we've modified the font to be crossguard, Sith Crossguard, and the tracks to be Kylo Wave. And then we've modified the main blade style to be this unstable with all these crazy lockup styles that Fernando does. And indeed, our crystal chamber is going to do the same thing. And of course, the readout is we're going to call it Crazy Fire. In case you have an OLED display, this is what's going to read out in the OLED display. And there's the end of our first preset. It's that simple to modify the presets, but now the big problem is we're going to need a folder called Cross on our SD card. So I'm going to reinsert my SD card, and of course it's always better to reformat these things. And there's my SD card, and I'm going to add a new folder on my SD card. The computer's a little slow on this. And I'm going to call this folder Cross. Now this folder's empty. Of course, if you want these kind of fonts, you're going to have to go buy them. So I'm going to minimize all this crap. I'm still in the Cross folder on my SD card. Now I'm going to go into my font folders, Proffie fonts, and I want Sith Crossguard, right? Sith. I think it's in his bundle complete. Crossguard. basically what I'm going to do is highlight all this stuff, copy, and paste. Yeah. Now, you know what? I think this is not the one that has the accent swings in it. But at any rate, I can make it one that has accent swings in it. Because I have K-Sys crossguard on NEC that's got all his swings in it. So we'll just use those because they work awesome. Copy. And I'm going to paste all his standard swings in there too. So now I have accent swings. In addition to smooth swing pairs, here's the smooth swing pairs, swing H and swing L's. But then I also have the standard swings, which are going to be accent swings. So now I have crossguard. But going back to my file, remember we also have to have in the tracks folder a wave called Kylo wave. Now, I already have a lot of these wave sounds, so I'm going to say let's go to Sabers. I know commissions. Let's see. I know in my transcendence I have it. So I'm going to go down to, let's see here, tracks. I'm looking for Kylo wave. Oh, there it is right there. Kylo wave. I'm going to play it just so you can hear it. Bada bing. That's the one I want. So I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to put it in my tracks folder. So now in my tracks folder on my SD card, I actually have a wave called Kylo wave. And it's in the tracks folder that's on my SD card. This is when I open my SD card, look. So here's, my computer library. Here's my SD card. It's my GoPro. And I'm going to double click that. You can see there's my crossguard font that I just put in. And then I have my tracks folder, and my tracks folder has Kylo wave in it. And then I'm going to go back to my configuration file, and you can see my first preset calls for a folder called cross for the font, which when we open my SD card, you can certainly see that I have a folder called cross, and that folder contains the sound font. And then it also calls for tracks Kylo wave, bada bing. So now I fixed that on my SD card. We can do this for every preset. You can check Fernando's website. I'll put the links to all of Fernando's websites in the information on this video, on the bottom of the video. I will put all the links to Fredrik's websites as well as all the links to all of Fernando's websites, where you can grab these blade styles and it's simple as copy, and then you paste it into your configuration file. The only thing is, if you'll remember, when I copied Fernando's blade style, there was not a comma after the double parentheses. You need to make sure you have to add the comma in after the double parentheses when you paste in the blade styles. And, this is Fernando's blade styles are a lot more complicated than what was on there initially. So you remember, initially, it was, a very small blade style. Whereas now we got one of Fernando's that's a lot more complicated. So I'm going to come down here. You can see that Fredrik's initial blade styles that he put on there is just one line, where Fernando's is like a whole page long. You don't have to write that code. Fernando already wrote it for you. All you have to do is copy and paste it. But you have to understand how these are set up. Remember, we have 2 blades in each preset. So we have to define 2 blades on each preset. So this is our first preset, crossguard with tracks Kylo wave, and then this is our first blade, which we got from Fernando's website and pasted it in there with a comma on the end of it. And then our second blade, which is the same blade, which we pasted in from Fernando's website. We put a comma on the end of it, and then we changed the label to Crazy Fire. That's going to read out in your OLED display if you have one. And then we have our preset Terminator, which is right here. That tells you that's the end of preset number 1. Preset number 2 is Smooth Jedi Tracks Mars Wave. We're going to leave all that be. Now I'm going to save this file, and I opened it from the config folder. And I'm going to go back. Actually, you know what? Let me eject something because I'm going to show y'all something else. I'm going to eject our SD card that we just made, and I'm going to put it in the Proffie so I can show you guys something else. And I'm going to plug the Proffie into my computer. If I can get the USB cord in. Bam. Proffie is plugged in. Now I'm going to open up Arduino. I'm going to go to Tools, make sure that, yep, COM port 28 Proffie. And now we're going to re-upload our file. Now remember, we've made changes to config mysaber config.h. So now I'm going to re-upload the new file that we just made with Fernando's complicated blade styles. We'll see if it compiles. If I did everything right, it should. Bada bing, 81%. So here we go. It's programming my Proffie, and I'm actively scrolling again at the lower right so you can see all this within Arduino. If you're not seeing this growing, 24, 26, 27 with these equal signs getting closer to the numbers, then it's not uploading. If you get a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, your upload didn't work. Either you didn't select your board, your COM port in the tools menu, or something else is wrong with your computer's communication with Proffie. But we're almost there. We've almost loaded with and our new SD card is in the Proffie. We have successfully programmed our Proffie 2.2 with our brand new config file and with our uploaded SD card. Now we're going to go to the serial monitor. And let's see. Let's go on. And I'm swinging the board around and it's playing all its swing sounds. Now I can go to lock up and it should do the lock sound, and it does. Lock off. Now I'm going to go off, OFF. Now, this is the serial monitor. You can test your SD card by typing SD test, and those dots that are running right now are the SD test. And this is 12.74 simultaneous SAS. That's really good. At 1,123 kilobits per second, 12.74 simultaneous audio streams. That's really good. So when I say on, it plays crossguard out wave, and then it's playing swing waves because I'm moving the Saber board around. But the bottom line is that, it's working. If I type blast, it should play a blast wave, and it does. I didn't know what that was. So when I go off, it does crossguard in wave, and now it's going back to idle. Now I can go type in next preset, and you can see it goes to Smooth Swing, Smooth Jedi, Font 1. It played Smooth Jedi Font 1 wave, which is the wave for that. Of course, you're not hearing any of that because I don't have a speaker or anything hooked up to this Proffie board, which begs the next question. A lot of people are like, well, can I program the board before I install it? And the answer to that is yes. Usually I program all my boards before I install them. So I've walked you through basic Proffie board programming. I'm going to disconnect my Proffie board. And I've walked you through some examples of advanced Proffie board programming, and including custom files on your SD card and custom blade styles at Fernando's website on Proffie 2.2. The big difference when you're programming a Proffie 2.2 is you have to make sure that you're selecting Proffie board V2 in your boards manager. If you're programming a Proffie 1.5, then you select Proffie board. See how it says Proffie board, not Proffie board V2? If you're programming a Teensy Saber, then you have to make sure that you, I may not have Teensy on here. Oh, nope, I do. If you're programming a Teensy Saber, you would select Teensy 3.2. Now, the key thing to remember is what's important is if you're programming a Teensy Saber, that you need to get your config file from the Teensy Saber V3 website, which I will link in the description of the information on this video. There's the Teensy Saber website. For the Teensy Saber V3, it's still active, and the Proffie OS still works on it. If you're programming a Proffie board 1.5, then you need to go to the Proffie board website, which is here, and you see the picture of the Proffie board 1.5. Actually, it's a 1.3 in the picture, but it's the same board. There's the Proffie board 1.5 with all your pads, and then when you get your config file, if you'll notice at the top of the config file, it says include Proffie board v1 config.h, but if we go back to Teensy Saber, on the config file it says include v3 config.h, because this is Teensy Saber v3. But if we go to Proffie board 2 website, which there's the Proffie board 2, you can see because the smaller boot and reset buttons and the SD card closer to the end, and the bigger pads, that screams out Proffie 2.2. And we go down to the sample config file for it. It says include Proffie board v2 config.h in this configurator. So the big difference in the headers between Proffie, Teensy Saber, and Proffie 1 are what's the include here. Is it Proffie board v2, Proffie board v1, or v3 config.h? And here you can see it's Proffie board v2, which means this configuration file is written for a Proffie board 2.2, not a Proffie 1.5 or a Teensy Saber. And if you try to program a Proffie 2.2 with a 1.5 config file, it's going to be all amuck because the pins are all different. It's just a huge mess. And yeah, nothing's going to work. So you have to make sure you're using that. Secondly, is Fernando's libraries are incredible. These are Fernando's main blade styles for the main OS, and then he has for the color change fork for Matt McGreary and the new OS 3.3 that's currently in beta. So I'm not even going to mess around with that stuff because it gets too complicated. But the bottom line is I will link Fernando's blade style libraries for you in the description of the video. I think we've given you a pretty good place to start. And as always, I would also tell you that if you want to see more videos, you can go to my YouTube page, which is www.youtube.com/Megtooth Sabers. That gets to my YouTube page. When you go to my YouTube channel, which I'm going to go to my YouTube channel right now, I have a playlist of tutorial videos for Teensy Saber and Proffie. Now, a lot of the videos are older, but here it is. This is my main YouTube channel. But if you scroll down, you'll see this Proffie Teensy Saber tutorials and test on the TRA, NeoPixel blade build, Proffie install, heavy grade blade testing, Teensy Saber programming intro. So this video that I'm making now is basically an updated version of that video, and then a Proffie plugin with horrible audio from my computer that was dying. Proffie and Teensy Saber blade style editor tutorial, that's still valid. Teensy Saber V3 and Proffie SD card authoring introduction. I think that's another video that's still relevant. Even though it's over a year old, it's still a relevant video. As well as adding smooth swing fonts to your Teensy Saber SD card. Those are still relevant videos. And this new video will also be in this playlist. But I also show you how to put together a Teensy Saber V3 in this playlist. So there's a lot of helpful videos in this playlist. And I'm hoping that this video helps you all. And thank you very much for watching, and may the force be with you, or the dark side as it were.